A billionaire's peaceful life begins to crumble when a terrible event shakes his home. His fiancée, who appears elegant, loving, and supportive in front of everyone, hides intentions no one suspects. One day, the twins he adores are found in danger, and all the signs seem to point toward the maid, who has cared for the family for years. She is suddenly accused of something she insists she did not do. The situation creates confusion, fear, and tension throughout the mansion, and the billionaire feels torn between the woman he plans to marry and the loyal employee he has trusted for so long. But in the middle of all this chaos, there is a small detail, something almost invisible, that becomes important later. It is an object left behind without much thought, meant to blame the innocent maid. At first, no one notices it. No one questions why it is there or what it means. The fiancé believes it will help her hide the truth. And for a while, it seems to work. However, this single detail slowly becomes the key that changes everything. It turns into the quiet piece of evidence that begins to reveal hidden intentions, unexpected betrayals, and a dangerous plan taking place beneath the surface of what looked like a perfect life. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Oh, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. We love to know that. Jonathan Miller felt lost after Emily died during the birth of their twins, Noah and Liam. Every room of the mansion reminded him of her. He walked through the halls with slow steps, trying to understand how life had changed so quickly. He had looked forward to raising the babies with Emily, but now he faced everything alone. His days were filled with confusion as he tried to balance grief and responsibility. When he attended meetings, his mind wandered back to the nursery. When he returned home, he often stood by the cribs without knowing what to say or do. The silence inside the house felt heavy, and he had trouble sleeping. Even though he tried to keep his life organized, he felt that nothing made sense without Emily. Jonathan's attempts to stay strong did not last long. He often found himself staring at work documents without understanding a single line. When he left the office to visit the nursery, he felt guilty for neglecting work, yet when he focused on business matters, he felt guilty for not spending enough time with Noah and Liam. The staff in the mansion tried to help, but their efforts were limited. They brought meals to his office and kept the babies comfortable, but none of them could ease the emotional weight he carried. During this vulnerable time, Vanessa Turner approached him in a gentle and calculated way. She appeared when he least expected it, offering a listening ear and calm presence. Jonathan did not question her intentions because he needed support. She spoke softly, told him to breathe, and encouraged him to rest. Her charm made her seem understanding, and her confidence made him feel safe. At first, she kept her distance, respecting the sensitive atmosphere of the house. But as days passed, she started visiting more often. She brought small gifts for the twins and healthy meals prepared especially for him. Jonathan barely paid attention. He felt relieved to have someone who understood his struggles. As Vanessa continued appearing in his life, she slowly entered areas of the mansion that once belonged only to Emily. She started helping with small tasks around the nursery, arranging baby clothes and holding the twins while Jonathan rested. She walked through the house as if she already knew the layout, opening curtains, organizing spaces, and giving suggestions about comfort and routine. Jonathan accepted these changes because he did not have the energy to resist. He saw her involvement as kindness, not intrusion. Grace Thompson brought a steady rhythm back into the house, something that had been missing since Emily's death. She had worked for the Miller family for more than 10 years, so she knew the mansion very well. Every morning she checked the nursery, arranged the babies' blankets, and prepared everything they needed for the day. She understood each cry and each expression, and she reacted quickly whenever one of the twins needed comfort. Jonathan trusted her completely because she had always been loyal and dedicated. However, Grace noticed something that left her worried. Whenever Vanessa held Noah or Liam, the babies reacted differently. They became restless, moving their arms and legs as if they wanted to escape. Sometimes they cried immediately, even if they had been calm before. The discomfort was clear to Grace, but Vanessa ignored every sign. Noah and Liam relaxed as soon as they were back in her arms, which confirmed her suspicion that something about Vanessa bothered them. While Jonathan relied on Grace in a natural and familiar way, Vanessa started noticing the connection between them. She watched how Jonathan listened to Grace, how he trusted her judgment, and how relaxed he seemed when she was around. This bothered Vanessa more than she expected. Every time Grace entered the room, Vanessa felt her confidence weaken. She did not like how naturally Grace cared for the twins or how easily the babies calmed down with her. Vanessa felt that Grace's bond with the children placed her in a position of importance that she herself did not have. As days passed, Vanessa's discomfort slowly turned into resentment. She paid close attention to Grace's actions, observing every movement and every interaction. She began noticing things that had never bothered her before. Vanessa felt overshadowed, even though Grace behaved in the same respectful manner she always had. She interpreted Grace's natural role in the house as a threat, something she needed to monitor. Vanessa became even more present in the mansion, acting as if she were an essential part of Jonathan's life. She made herself available from the moment he woke up until late in the evening. She organized dinners carefully planned to make Jonathan feel supported. She encouraged him to attend corporate events, and she always stood at his side with a reassuring smile. Jonathan accepted all of this because he believed she truly wanted to help him heal. While Vanessa increased her influence, Grace continued her routine without changing her behavior. She woke early, cared for Noah and Liam, and managed every part of the house the same way she always had. But even in her calm manner, she noticed that something inside the mansion had shifted. The twins cried more often, especially when Vanessa entered the room. Their bodies tensed, and they looked for Grace with clear discomfort. Vanessa, now officially introduced as Jonathan's fiancée, treated Grace with polite words, but cold eyes. She smiled when speaking, but the expression never reached her gaze. Vanessa approached her with superficial kindness, but her tone carried a sharp edge that only Grace seemed to notice. Whenever Vanessa held the twins and they cried, Vanessa pretended not to understand the cause. Vanessa made the atmosphere in the mansion heavier when she began interfering directly with the twins' care. She watched every move Grace made and criticized even the smallest actions. She said Grace's methods were old and ineffective. Jonathan, exhausted by business meetings, tried to avoid any argument. He told both women that they simply had different opinions. Grace began noticing strange details that did not make sense. Items in the nursery were moved to unusual places. Bottles that she had filled earlier were left half open. Schedules she carefully maintained were suddenly altered without explanation. Something was clearly wrong. Vanessa dismissed these concerns, saying Grace was too strict or too forgetful, but Grace knew these changes were not accidents. Vanessa woke up that morning with a calm expression that did not match the tension growing inside the mansion. Jonathan left earlier than usual, and Vanessa said goodbye with a soft smile. The second he was gone, her expression changed. She walked directly to the staff and informed them that everyone had to leave the house for internal maintenance. She used a firm tone that left no room for questions. Soon the mansion became completely silent. Vanessa closed the main door and stood still for a moment, confirming that no one else was there. She went to the nursery, took Noah and Liam from their cribs, and carried both babies outside. She headed toward the large metal bathtub placed in the yard. She placed Noah and Liam inside it without hesitating as she turned on the water and let it fill the tub. The babies began crying immediately, their voices loud and desperate, but she did not stop. She continued filling the tub until the water reached a level she found suitable. Then she took a pair of yellow gloves, identical to the ones Grace used for cleaning, and hung them over the rim of the metal tub. Her actions were deliberate and slow. Noah and Liam's crying became stronger as the hot water surrounded them. They squirmed, their faces red with discomfort, but Vanessa looked at them without emotion. Inside the house, Vanessa moved through the rooms with no sense of urgency. She did not check on the babies or respond to their cries. Instead, she stayed indoors for hours, walking from one area to another, sometimes sitting down, sometimes simply waiting. Every minute that passed was part of her plan. Jonathan arrived home expecting a quiet evening, but the moment he stepped out of the car, he heard loud, desperate crying coming from the garden. His heart raced as he ran across the yard. At the same time, Grace returned to the mansion, carrying her work bag. She heard the same cries and rushed toward the garden. When Jonathan reached the large metal tub, he froze in shock. Noah and Liam were inside the hot water, their faces red and their bodies trembling as they cried uncontrollably. His eyes moved from the twins to the pair of yellow gloves hanging over the rim of the tub. They were identical to the gloves Grace used every day for cleaning. His confusion turned into fear. Grace arrived a moment later, and the expression on her face changed to horror when she saw the twins inside the tub. Grace dropped her bag and ran to the babies, lifting them out of the hot water as fast as she could. Her hands shook as she held them close, trying to soothe their cries. Jonathan stood back, shocked and unable to process what was happening. He looked at the gloves again. Those were Grace's gloves. Grace turned to Jonathan, her eyes filled with confusion and fear. She tried to explain immediately, telling him she would never leave the babies like that something was terribly wrong. Her voice cracked as she spoke, and tears ran down her cheeks. She kept repeating that she had just returned, that she had nothing to do with what he had found. As Grace tried to speak, Vanessa stepped out through the doorway of the mansion. She walked toward them slowly with a carefully measured expression on her face. She placed a hand over her chest and let out a quiet gasp, perfectly timed to make her appearance seem innocent. She looked at Jonathan with wide eyes, as if she were just as confused as he was. Then she looked at Grace, and her expression subtly shifted into one of concern, mixed with suspicion. Grace felt overwhelmed after being wrongly accused, but her determination grew stronger instead of fading. She knew she had to prove her innocence, not only for herself, but also for Noah and Liam, whom she loved deeply. The first thing she did was carefully pick up the yellow gloves that had been left by the metal tub. When she looked closely at the inside of the gloves, she noticed something unusual. Small, dark residues stuck beneath the inner fingernail areas. They looked like traces left from someone else's skin or contact. Grace realized she had no support from the family. With no one on her side, she understood she needed outside help. She remembered an old acquaintance, an experienced professional who worked at an independent laboratory. Without telling anyone, Grace contacted him, explaining that she needed private assistance. She traveled discreetly to meet him, bringing the sealed gloves. The waiting period felt long, but soon the results arrived. The technician explained the findings with a serious expression. The material found inside the gloves contained genetic traces from a woman, someone who was not Grace. The results were clear and undeniable. Grace felt a mix of relief and fear. Grace went to the local police department early in the morning, carrying all the documents she had gathered and the laboratory results that proved another woman had worn the yellow gloves. She sat in front of the investigators and explained everything calmly, step by step. The investigators began gathering additional information to verify Grace's claims. They requested authorization to examine the mansion's camera recordings from the day of the incident. The recordings clearly showed Vanessa ordering all the employees to leave the property earlier than usual, claiming the mansion needed internal maintenance. This detail matched Grace's testimony and raised immediate suspicion. After reviewing the camera footage, the investigators interviewed several employees from the mansion. Each one described Vanessa's behavior during the days leading up to the incident. Their testimonies were consistent. Many of them recalled her walking around the service areas without explanation, asking strange questions, and monitoring the routine closely. With enough evidence gathered, the investigators confronted Vanessa directly. They asked her to come to the station to clarify some details about the incident. Vanessa arrived with a calm expression, pretending she had nothing to hide. But the investigators began showing her the evidence one piece at a time. They displayed the camera footage showing her ordering the staff to leave. Then they showed the timeline proving she was alone with the twins for several hours. Finally, they mentioned the DNA found inside the gloves. Vanessa froze for a moment, caught by surprise. As the questioning continued, the investigators revealed another disturbing discovery. They had checked Vanessa's internet searches and found several inquiries related to methods of transferring assets, inheritance procedures, and legal ways to gain financial control over a partner. These searches were conducted weeks before the incident. Jonathan received the news of Vanessa's arrest in a state of shock. When the authorities confirmed that the genetic material found inside the gloves matched hers, he stood completely still, unable to process everything at once. The truth struck him with painful force. He had trusted Vanessa, allowed her into his home, and believed her kind gestures. Now he realized every action had been part of a manipulation he never saw coming. Grace was officially declared innocent, and the officers informed her that her name had been fully cleared. The moment she heard the words, she felt a deep relief wash over her body. She returned to the mansion with a cautious heart, unsure of how the atmosphere would feel after everything that had happened. Noah and Liam responded to her return in a way that surprised no one who truly understood them. As soon as Grace approached their cribs, the twins recognized her presence. Their bodies relaxed, and their expressions softened with familiarity. Noah reached out his small hand first, and Liam followed, both seeking the comfort they had missed. Grace picked them up gently, holding one in each arm. Jonathan stepped into the room with hesitant steps, unsure of how to speak to Grace after everything he had done. His voice trembled as he called her name. Grace turned toward him, still holding the twins gently. Their eyes met, and Jonathan felt a painful mix of gratitude and regret. He approached slowly and admitted that he had failed her, that he had doubted her when she needed him to trust her the most. Jonathan apologized sincerely, explaining that the pressure, fear, and emotional manipulation had clouded his judgment. In the days that followed Vanessa's arrest, the mansion slowly began to regain its stability. With her gone, the anxious atmosphere that had taken over the household slowly faded. The staff resumed their routines without fear. Grace organized the nursery again, returning everything to its proper place. Jonathan made a firm decision to remove every trace of Vanessa from his life. Jonathan noticed as the months passed that his connection with Grace was growing in a quiet and natural way. What began as simple cooperation slowly turned into something deeper. He watched how she handled the twins with patience, how she soothed them when they were restless, and how she always put their well-being first. Jonathan realized he felt safe when she was around because she always brought clarity and calm. As the household settled into a peaceful routine, Noah and Liam continued to grow healthy and full of energy. Their early trauma left no visible marks thanks to the consistent comfort they received from Grace. They laughed easily and reached for her with excitement every time she entered the room. The twins' happiness was a constant reminder of how essential Grace had been through all the chaos. Eventually, Jonathan reached a point where he knew exactly what he wanted for his future. He had spent months observing the way Grace cared for his children, the way she supported him without judgment, and the way she helped rebuild his life with quiet strength. One evening, in a simple and sincere moment inside the mansion, he asked Grace to marry him. There was no grand decoration, no audience, only the two of them standing in the place where their bond had grown naturally over time. Grace felt tears fill her eyes as she accepted, overwhelmed with emotion and gratitude. Their wedding was held at the mansion, simple and intimate, surrounded by the people who had witnessed their journey. Noah and Liam, now older and full of joy, stayed close to Grace throughout the ceremony. The atmosphere was peaceful and full of genuine affection. From that day on, the family found the stability they had long searched for. Jonathan felt complete again, knowing he had rebuilt his life with someone who represented honesty and kindness. Grace felt embraced by a family she loved deeply. Together they began a new chapter marked by true affection, healing, and the promise of brighter days.